My name is Alexis Davis. I'm the social media manager at RSDSA. I'm so excited for tonight's Facebook Live session. We really enjoy having all of you here with us. So tonight we will have a great dialogue between Jim Broach, he is RSDSA's Executive Vice President and Director, and Dr. Melanie Levine. So if you have any questions for Jim or Dr. Levine, be sure to share them in the comments, but I will let them take it from here.
Thank you, Alexis. I'm really glad that people at least got to see you. Alexis has been our social media consultant and czar for the last year, and she's done a fabulous job, and all our platforms are doing well thanks to her leadership, and I really appreciate it. And Melanie Levine, we've known each other for years. She actually, years ago, she did a poker tournament to raise some money for our organization.
Yes.
And that was great. And she's attended some of our fundraisers, and sometimes I've referred individuals to her for teletherapy. And she's just a wonderful, wonderful person.
Likewise.
Thank you. And so what we're going to do is Melanie has prepared a short presentation based on some of the questions that were sent earlier. And then afterwards, I'll come back on the screen and we'll answer some of your questions. And I really appreciate that you've joined us tonight. And Melanie, it's all yours.
All right. So I'm just going to bring up my presentation here, and I would love for you guys to tell me if you can see it. So can someone put in the comments here if you can see the presentation? It says CRPS Facebook Live. Somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see it. All right, so my name is Dr. Melanie Levine. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I have offices in Manhattan as well as Long Island, and I treat all kinds of disorders. So I treat people with anxiety, depression. Thank you for telling me you can see it. I treat people with chronic pain also. I know it's small. All right, let me see if I can, here, let me see if this helps. I know, yeah, this is full screen, but then I don't know if you can see me or hear me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to see if we can send out that presentation afterwards. So I'm just going to chat away, and I'll see if I can put up this presentation somewhere, and I'll talk to Jim and Alexis about it afterwards. So I treat teenagers and I treat adults. I do marital counseling also. But I'm going to give you a little bit of my story. And because I am also a CRPS warrior, so back in 2009, I woke up one morning and my foot was huge, swollen, purple, blue, all kinds of colors. And I couldn't put my foot on the ground. And it was because it hurt so much. And I had these electric shock shooting pains that were going down my leg, into my foot. And I see that someone's having trouble hearing or seeing me. So I don't know if Alexis is still around. Someone is writing in the comments she can't hear or see. So I didn't know what was happening to me. Now, I'd been a dancer. I was doing jazz and hip hop and all of that, going to the gym. So I'd been used to having some injuries in my foot, but this was a whole different beast. I literally couldn't walk. So it happened to be Memorial Day weekend, the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, and there were no doctor. You know, what doctor is in on Memorial Day weekend, right? So I just happened to look up and find somebody who I didn't know that was happened to be in. I went to some sports podiatrist. I hopped and hopped and hopped on my way. I was living in New York City at the time. I hopped to get into a cab, went there, and the doctor said, I'm going to need to take an x-ray. I said, that's fine. So I hopped down the hall to take an x-ray. And the nurse said, you're going to need to put your foot on the x-ray thing. And I said, I don't think you quite understand. I cannot put my foot down onto the x-ray thing. And she grabbed my foot and put it down, and I screamed bloody murder. So very obvious that a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses don't understand what CRPS is, right? So this doctor gave me a shot of cortisone and wrapped it in a bandage. So what do you think happened? The thing swelled around the bandage, didn't heal anything. The shot did absolutely nothing for the swelling. 8 doctors later, still no treatment, no diagnosis. One of my doctors even told me to stop being a baby and just walk. So luckily, my uncle is a podiatrist, although unluckily he happened to be away on vacation while I was going through all of this. But luckily, he finally came home. I went to see him and he said, I think I might know what this is. So I went in to see him and he said, I'm going to send you across the street to one of my colleagues. Yeah, ouch, I know. So I'm just responding to some of the comments. So he sent me across the street to one of his colleagues, and the colleague said, I think you have RSD, which is, the label for this disorder from years ago. I said, RSD, what? I've never heard of that. What is that? He said, it's a neurological condition. Neurological? I'm thinking I broke it or pulled a tendon or something like that. He said, it's neurological. It means something has gone haywire in your nervous system. This was the furthest thing from what I was thinking was wrong with me, right? Which is probably what you all were thinking if this is your diagnosis. The best advice he gave me was, don't go home and go looking on the internet because you're going to read worst case scenario things. Very true. Another piece of great advice he gave me was to go to a pain management doctor, and he gave me a very good referral to somebody in New York City. So a few days later, go to pain management doctor. Of course, didn't get on the best medication right away, but we were on a plan. This doctor happened to be very good because he said to me, you're going to walk again, you're going to dance again, you're going to do all the things that you were doing before. And what was so wonderful about that is he gave me hope. And that hope kept me going throughout. Right, don't Google your symptoms. Somebody wrote in the chat, absolutely. So that gave me hope. I never once thought I wasn't going to get better. I never once thought I'm not going to walk again. Although I happened to be on crutches for almost 2 years, I still had hope. I was always going to get better. That was my mindset. I'm always going to get better. So through this pain management doctor, I wound up getting on the best combination of medications I could. I took Celebrex for a while, which helped bring down the swelling. And then we found a great combination of an antidepressant and an anticonvulsant that, yes, we will figure out a way to get the PowerPoint, and an anticonvulsant that really worked for me. But the magic, which I'm going to get into, is physical therapy. So let me move down the slide here a little bit. Okay, so my treatment and recovery, what was the most effective? The most effective things for me, and I'm going to get into your questions because some people sent in questions and we're definitely going to get to them. First thing, the magic, goal-directed physical therapy. This is absolutely crucial, I believe, to getting better. Finding a really good physical therapist who knows what CRPS is and who knows the best exercises. My physical therapist is absolutely, sorry, my dog, is absolutely wonderful. She not only is knowledgeable about CRPS, but about the body in general. So a little while later in the presentation, we'll talk about what specific exercises are the best for rewiring and retraining that nervous system. The next thing is moving, really keeping on moving. The worst thing for CRPS is to stay stationary. Why is that? Because we need the nervous system to acclimate to new stimuli, to acclimate to moving, we need the nervous system to rewire itself, to teach the brain that there shouldn't be pain where there is pain. My own personal, and yes, treatments work differently for each person. I'm just sharing my experience, okay? My own personal medications that I take doesn't mean it's going to work for you, just sharing my experience. Cymbalta and Topamax are the medications that I take. Cymbalta in low doses is a nerve pain reliever. Topamax is an anticonvulsant that controls my burning, searing pains down my leg, and that's what anticonvulsants can do. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but that's just my experience. What else? Not making CRPS my whole life. At the time, I was training to be a psychologist, and really focusing on my training, my studying, and, pursuing my passion, really helped to take the focus off of the CRPS. Maintaining activities, those that I still could do despite my pain. Jim mentioned before that I held a poker tournament as a fundraiser. At the time, I was quite an avid poker player, so I still went and played poker, even though I was on crutches. My friends would drive me there and rent a wheelchair for me and would wheel me around the casino. And I sat at the poker table, getting up every so often to move around, and they would help me to the restroom and all of that. And I still maintained my activities. I went out to dinner with friends and with a little bit of gardening, and all that stuff. But I still maintained the activities that I could do. And I focused on the things that I was able to and tried not to focus on the things that I couldn't do. Like I couldn't dance and go to the gym as much as I could. So I tried to still maintain the things that I could do. So thank you in the comments. I love that. Yes, still was able to play poker. All right, so let's move down a little bit in the presentation. Shh, my dog is going crazy. So want to talk a little bit about chronic pain strategies, just from a psychological point of view. So hopefully these will help you a little bit. And I put little asterisks next to the ones that I'm going to delve into a little bit more deeply. So one behavioral strategy is kind of the use it or lose it to break the pain cycle. And I talked about this a little bit more, a little bit before. So it's kind of my dog, she's a Shih Tzu. So she was my present to myself after I started walking again. I promised myself I'd get a dog once I got off my crutches, and I did. So she's 9 years old. So use it or lose it to break the pain cycle. Somebody put a question in there about did I do desensitization? And I did, because I was having that guarding, and I had trouble with people touching my foot. It was my right foot. So in physical therapy, my physical therapist and I really worked on her being able to touch me. She's not a therapy dog, but I would love to make her one. I do bring her to session because most of my patients really do love her, and she's nice and calm. So my physical therapist and I did work on desensitization. It was really hard for her to touch me at the beginning. So we slowly worked on her massaging, and by the end, she could really get in there, and I actually like it now. I didn't have that trouble with other materials. I know a lot of people with CRPS have that, where the wind hurts or clothing. If you take a washcloth to it, I know that's extreme pain. I didn't have that, but it was actually human touch that was really hard for me. So we worked on her human touch, and by the end of physical therapy, I was really able to tolerate that. So that's kind of what the use it or lose it is about. It's about acclimating to stimuli. It's about weight bearing. That was the hardest part for me, was about weight bearing. So that's the use it or lose it, is about weight bearing, and it's also about carrying. So if you have it in your upper limbs, it's about carrying, and it's about rewiring that cycle. It's about allowing the nervous system to rewire itself. Now, from a psychological point of view, it's about challenging your thoughts about that, because there are going to be some days where you're thinking, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, or it's going to be too hard, or it's going to be too painful, or it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all, because when you're in pain, why would you want to do that? but it's not a typical injury. Like right now, I actually have a real back injury, which has nothing to do with CRPS. So for that, I do actually need to rest a little bit. I'm not going to push myself to do too much. Completely different than CRPS. In CRPS, you do need to push yourself a little more and challenge those thoughts of, it's going to hurt me if I do this. But if you're with the right physical therapist, she'll take you just to that limit of where it's good for you and then stop. So you do have to rewire that brain system. Next thing is practicing the physical therapy exercises at home consistently. This is a hard one because after we go to physical therapy, what happens? We're exhausted, we're tired, we don't want to do it at home. I know it's going fast. I will definitely find a way to get it to you. Okay, Michelle? Practicing those physical therapy exercises at home consistently is important. It's kind of like regular therapy, mental health therapy. If you don't do the therapy exercises at home and you're only going to therapy, let's say 45 minutes a week, then it's kind of a waste. So practicing those exercises consistently is, again, going to help rewire that brain circuitry. Experimenting with medications, again, important. If one isn't working for you, try another one, then try another one, then try another one. I think I tried, 5 or 6, but I actually think that's a small amount for some people. I have patients who've tried 10, 12 medications. A caveat to that is tolerating side effects, right? I know a lot of patients talk to me about not really wanting to deal with the side effects. But then you have to think about the cost-benefit ratio of that. I'm still on the Cymbalta and the Topamax, and I have side effects from them. But then I think about, which do I want? Do I want the pain or do I want the side effects? So the Cymbalta makes me exhausted. I'm tired. It's hard for me to get out of bed in the morning. The Topamax gives me brain fog. So if during the presentation you see me like lag a little bit, or if you see me having trouble finding a word, that's from the Topamax. They also give me, I have my water right here because I have dry mouth from, I'm not sure which medication gives me that. I get stomach aches, probably a combination of the CRPS and the meds. So it's, I'm not here to tell you which which side effects to tolerate. That's a personal decision, and it's probably on a graded scale. How difficult are the side effects? For me, the tiredness and the brain fog is tolerable, and to me, those are much more tolerable than the pain. So, for me, I'm okay with those, but maybe on some other ones, like I was on Lyrica and I gained 30 pounds in 2 weeks. That was not tolerable for me. So then I asked my doctor to switch the medication. So you just have to, play around with them. There's so many medications out there that it's worth doing a trial and error. And if one medication isn't working for your pain at all, then it's imperative that you talk to your doctor and say, this isn't working for me, so I definitely need something else. There are different classes of drugs. There are different types of drugs. There are the antidepressants. There are anticonvulsants. There are the opioids. So you want to make sure you're covering all the bases, okay? And yes, I see that other people have experiences in the chat with Topamax too. Okay, so the next box is about activity scheduling and self-care. We spoke before about my personal experience with activity scheduling. I was still playing poker and all that wonderful stuff. Doing things that you enjoy activates the dopamine centers in your brain. The dopamine centers bring you joy. They make you feel good. Those are the feel-good neurotransmitters in your brain, and they can act like natural antidepressants. So you want to keep doing the things that bring you pleasure. So that can be something so small, from if you have a dog, petting your dog, to spending time with your kids, to watching a favorite TV show, to putting on the best song that you love, to something grand. If you're able to, take a vacation, or call up one of your best friends, or read a really good book. Anything that you enjoy can really release those feel-good neurotransmitters. So keep doing things that you're physically capable of doing to bring you pleasure, to increase that dopamine in your brain. And self-care, so important. Self-care can be things like lighting a candle. To me, watching the flickering of a candle is so soothing. I love sitting in my living room and just looking at how cozy it is. Anything can be self-care. You taking a warm, relaxing shower. If you can tolerate massage, maybe on a body part that doesn't have the CRPS, get a massage, either a professional medical one or from a loved one. Swimming, yes, I love that. So some, TLC for yourself. Great behavioral strategy for chronic pain. Social support, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about. So social support is calling up or spending time. I know it's a little hard right now in the quarantine, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later, but spending time or calling up your friends, your family, coworkers, if you're in school, your classmates. And I see some people writing in the comments, relaxation strategies, which we're going to go over in a little bit. Vitamins. Vitamins can really be helpful because a lot of us, especially with chronic pain, are actually deficient in some of our vitamins. So I might suggest that you get some blood work done by your GP and see if you're lacking in vitamin B12, vitamin D. Most of us are lacking in vitamin D, actually, because we don't get enough sun. So vitamin D can really be helpful for people with chronic pain and inflammation. So vitamin C is also helpful, vitamin B3 and vitamin E. Getting good sleep is also helpful for chronic pain. And we're going to talk a little bit about diet as well. So one of the questions that came through on the email when we were talking about having this live is how to use coping strategies faster when faced with new symptoms. How to use coping strategies faster when faced with new symptoms. I love this question. So thank you to whoever submitted it. I have a few answers to this because a lot of us can have new symptoms when we have CRPS. So one of my suggestions is to write down your strategies that work for you right now. Put them on little Post-it notes or index cards and either keep them in a file or post them in your room, whatever works for you. So they're easy to call upon if you do have a new symptom. I would also encourage you to practice them every day. These are great things to practice, right? Self-care, activity scheduling, massage, relaxation strategies. All these things are great to do every day. So the more you practice them, the easier they are to call upon. I would also maybe enlist a friend or a family member to help you. So if you tell them what your coping strategies are, then when you're under duress because you have a new symptom, it's going to be easier for them to remember than when you're under stress. So maybe they could help you. Okay. So let's move on to the next section here, which is social support. And a number of you had questions about social support. So I want to talk a little bit about what we can do now, because it's kind of hard under the quarantine. So it can be hard for many of us, especially if we are extroverts. This is a time for us to be really creative. Kids are really creative, so it can be helpful to us to look to them for what they're doing. For example, many children are FaceTiming with friends and cousins and playing board games. So that might be an idea to reach out to some people and play board games with them. I'm actually married to a rabbi, And we do our Shabbat services online. So if you're religious, maybe you could see if your church or whatever denomination you practice is holding services online. We can spend time with family or friends by watching movies together or a favorite TV show. So you could do on FaceTime or Zoom or any of the applications that are available right now. You can also cook meals together online. So I know one of my patients does that with some of their friends. They open up a bottle of wine each. They have a glass of wine and they cook, and they have a nice time together, and then they eat their meals together through Zoom. It's a great idea to make a daily or a weekly date with some friends. Instead of just saying, hey, let's meet up on Zoom sometime, if you make that a daily or weekly date, you actually have something scheduled, you have that to look forward to, and then you know you're going to do it. I also love the idea of reaching out to family or friends who you haven't seen or talked to in a long time. So that can help you build connections. Okay, so that's an answer to another question that came through, which was how can we stay connected during this time? Another one is, how do we cope with the loss of friends or family due to CRPS? I'm going to tell you, this happened to me. Some of my best friends who I had disappeared. So this is not unique. This happens to so many of us. There's the dry mouth. The disappearance of friends or family members is not unique to CRPS even. It happens to those going through breakups, job loss, cancer, and other chronic pain conditions. So why does this happen? Not every person is equipped to deal with trauma. And while the trauma is happening to us, friends or family members might not be capable, even subconsciously, to deal with the strong emotions that help someone who's going through a trauma. Helping a friend who's going through trauma can also bring up someone else's own vulnerability. It's natural to make assumptions about why friends or family disappear, but the reality is we don't really know why they go away. We also need to examine our own thoughts and expectations of others and our own demands about friendship. Friendships evolve and change over time. Just because we have been friends with someone in one part of our lives doesn't mean we're meant to be friends with them forever, unfortunately. Think about friends that you may have had in college, and then once you maybe move on to getting a job or get married, friends that you had when you were single versus friends that you had when you were married are different. Different parts of your life mean that you have different friends. Our journeys change. What's important is to make room for people who are there for you and be grateful for those people. We can focus on and be grateful for those people that did stick around. It's a time to be your own best friend, but also be creative in making new friends. So we can join, I know it's hard right now to go out and be social, but we can join groups online. We can join support groups for CRPS. I might be cautious about that because you don't want to join support groups that are shrouded in negativity, but maybe join some positive ones, and other types of groups online, maybe a movie group or a book club or something like that. Okay, moving on. This is one of my favorite slides because it's about relaxation strategies. Deep breathing. I'm going to give you some great relaxation tools. Now, a lot of people talk about deep breathing and find it helpful for them. And then sometimes I have my patients who come in and say, deep breathing doesn't work for me. And then I say, well, show me how you do it. And they're not doing it right. So it is true, and somebody said in the chat before that not all tools and not all strategies and not all treatments work for everybody. And that is correct. So your tools are not going to work for you all the time. But deep breathing is really a good one. And I want to make sure that you're doing it right if this is something that you choose to do. You don't have to do it, but I really want to teach you how to do it because I think this is one of the most wonderful things. And I see a great question in the chat. I'm going to talk to you about ketamine a little while later. Most of us breathe really shallowly through our chests just because it's a little more efficient. If we were deep breathing throughout the whole day, it would just be too hard. So I want you to sort of focus down in your belly area. That's where our diaphragm is. And that's where we really should be breathing. It's just too hard to do it consistently throughout the day. But when we focus on deep breathing, it can be really helpful. It just brings down our overall stress level, gets really good oxygen into our muscles, which we really need. And it can just help with our overall tension level, can just relax everything. We can't be stressed and relaxed at the same time. So what I'd like you to do is imagine that there is a deflated balloon in that diaphragm. And when we take a nice deep breath in through the nose, the diaphragm and that balloon is going to inflate. We're going to make that belly big. And when we exhale through our mouth, the balloon and the diaphragm is going to deflate. Belly's going to go down. So if you feel comfortable, try to do this with me. So we're going to inhale through the nose and diaphragm's going to come out. Your chest will move a little bit. So let's inhale and hold it for a few seconds. So inhale. Hold it. And then exhale. And let's try one more together. So inhale and hold it. And exhale through your mouth. Really good. My advice for deep breathing, I like to remember things in fives. So you breathe in for 5 counts and breathe out for 5 counts and do it 5 times. So that's easy to remember. Okay? And do it several times a day. Don't even wait until you feel stressed to do it. If you practice it when you're not stressed, it'll be an easier skill to call up. So 5 breaths in, hold it, 5 breaths out, and then do it. Try to do it 5 times a day. You might feel a little dizzy at first, and that's okay. As you keep practicing it, you'll get better at it, okay? Other relaxation strategies, a warm bath. It's nice, put some candles around, put some relaxation music on, very nice. Meditation, guided meditation, beautiful. My favorite one I put down on the slides, which we'll get to, is called the body scan. The reason I like this one so much is because if you're too anxious, just telling somebody during meditation to relax, empty your mind can be really difficult. But the body scan actually gives you directions during the meditation. So it gives your mind something to focus on. And you can find that just by searching it on YouTube. Then there are apps called Calm or Headspace, which can be really good for relaxation. Listening to soothing music is always good. And then somebody wrote in, I would like to see guided imagery in depth. I'm going to hold off on that just to see if we have enough time at the end. I do have an example of one. I'm going to put it to the side. And let's keep an eye on the clock. And I will surely do that for you at the end if we have some time. I'm going to talk about sleep hygiene very quickly because sleep is really important for those of us. It's important for everybody actually, but important for those of us with chronic pain. So a lot of us have cell phones, right? Computers, iPhones. The sleep experts recommend putting all electronics away an hour before bed. I know that's hard, but it really can be helpful because that blue light is from the phones is very stimulating. So better to dim all your lights at home, get into bed or stay on the couch, whatever it is, and do something soothing before bed. You can read a book, do a crossword puzzle, just do something really relaxing before bed. Take a warm shower might be helpful. I know what sleep is hard, but doing some of the sleep hygiene might be helpful. Drink a chamomile tea, have a light snack. Cutting out caffeine can really be helpful if you have your last cup of caffeine around noon, but actually caffeine in general is probably not great for somebody with CRPS because that caffeine can activate the nervous system. So try to cut it out just altogether. Let me see what else here. Limit alcohol. And the room, your bedroom itself your bed should only be used for sleep. You want to keep the room kind of cool around 68 to 70 degrees because we actually sleep better in cool temperatures. Oh, cotton sheets. Yes, that's very nice. And as dark as possible. If you have light coming into your room early in the morning, that's going to kind of wake you up. And some noise canceling might be helpful too. If you have like a white noise machine, that might be nice. Melatonin can be helpful. And there are other prescription drugs that might be helpful as well. You can also do deep breathing or meditation right before you fall asleep. Okay, let's talk about foods. Let's talk about diet. So I'm sure you guys know what kind of foods are not great for you and not great for chronic pain, but maybe you don't know which foods might be helpful in decreasing inflammation. So the foods that aren't great, sugary foods, fried foods, caffeine, things like that. But good foods, if you like fish, fish with omega-3s, cherries, green leafy vegetables like kale and spinach, grass-fed organic meat, peppers, mushrooms, grapes, turmeric is really good, and pepper. So I'll send you guys that list on the PowerPoint. So if you like any of those foods, it would be really great to add to your diet and really try to limit those other foods because once you ingest them, it just increases that inflammation in your body. All right, moving on. Almost done with this presentation here, and then I can fire up some of your questions. So more audience questions that I got. So how do you get an 18-year-old who has had CRPS for 6 years and has been through multiple therapies, multiple medications, 6 weeks in Boston Children's Hospital, multiple psychologists to regain hope? He's depressed, angry, and has given up all hope that something will work. I hear this a lot, actually. So what I would suggest to this mom is to talk to your son about his values, his passions, his goals. What does he want from his life? What does he see himself doing outside of CRPS? And just like I spoke to you before about, I was in graduate school when my CRPS hit. And, I kept working on those goals because if you make the CRPS your whole life, then it is going to become your whole life and you are going to lose hope. But if you still work on those values, those passions, those goals, that can keep you going and that can keep you motivated. So I would be curious about that. Is he still working on that? We need a passion. We need a goal. We need something to keep looking forward to. If you've ever read or heard of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote about survivors of the Holocaust, and they even kept going, because they had a goal, they had a passion, they had something that they were living for, so this boy needs something to live for. I would also ask him about finding examples that he can relate to, something like sports stars or anything of the sort, any famous person he can relate to, someone who experienced rejection or an injury, some kind of obstacles that they had to overcome in order to be successful, and maybe he can relate to their story in any way. Second question is, how not to fear that the CRPS will come back if you're in remission. Absolutely normal fear to have, and I think a lot of us have had that fear if we're feeling better. You know, took me 2 years to get better, and I'm functional, but I do have my fears and I have my setbacks. So my advice is to appreciate every day. Appreciate every day that you feel good. Live in the moment. And remember your strength and resiliency for if it does come back. You know, because we can't predict the future. So just being mindful and living every day in its present moment. But also remember that if it does come back, you have the strength and resiliency to get through it one time, and you'll do it again. And the last question on this slide is, how do you deal with the guilt because you don't know how or why you were one of the people to go through remission? So a lot of people that I counsel deal with guilt for all kinds of different reasons. And what I like to talk about is guilt is a feeling that comes from thinking that we did something wrong. So I encourage anybody who's feeling guilt to think about, well, what do you think you did wrong? And I have a little graph here that takes you through a cognitive process of kind of examining those thoughts. So the situation is, I got better, or I'm in remission. And the thought is, I did something wrong. And the consequence is guilt. Well, let's challenge that thought. So what did you do wrong? What could you possibly have done wrong that has led to you being in remission? And let's challenge that a little bit. So what thoughts could you come up with for that? And how could you think differently and to help you feel better? So that's my advice about that. So I'd love to know from Jim if we have time to do an imagery, or if he would prefer I get to some of the questions instead.
Why don't you just do a couple of minutes on guided imagery, and then we can go to questions.
Okay. So if anybody would like to participate in this guided imagery, I encourage you to. And if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine too. And if there are any parts of this that cause you, or you think will cause you physical or emotional pain, please do not participate in that. To get started, sit up straight in a comfortable chair with your feet on the floor. If there's a more comfortable position for you, certainly use it. Sitting up will help you focus on the exercise. If any step in the exercise isn't comfortable, either physically or emotionally, just focus on your breathing during that step instead. Now slowly close your eyes or focus on one spot on the floor or wall. Invite your body and mind to begin to relax. Begin to focus on your breathing, following your breath as it comes into your body and goes out of your body. Take 2 slow, relaxed, deep breaths, watching your breathing come in and then go out. Then return your breathing to a normal rate and normal depth, and continue to watch your breath. Imagine that with each breath in, you're breathing in comfort and relaxation, and with each breath out, you're breathing out any discomfort or worry. I want you to imagine that you're sitting outside in a comfortable chair. Imagine that it's a little before sunset. and you're facing in the direction of the setting sun. To begin, look out over the sky, starting with the sky above you, gradually lowering your eyes to the horizon. Notice if there are clouds in the sky and if you see or hear any birds calling. Notice the temperature of the air around you, imagining a comfortable warmth. Notice the chair you're sitting in and how well it supports you. Now begin to notice the colors you see in the sky. As the sun is just starting to set, imagine seeing different shades of red in the sky. Begin to imagine that the discomfort in your body is reflected in the colors of the sky. Imagine seeing the red in the sky equal to the discomfort you feel in your body. If your level of discomfort is high, imagine bright red. If your level of discomfort is slightly less, imagine a softer red. As the sun begins to set, imagine seeing that red in the sky fade to a softer red and orange. Notice this softer red and orange for a few moments. As the light slowly continues to fade, imagine the red hues lessening and slowly becoming softer orange. Imagine your body becoming more comfortable as the color fades in the sky. And slowly, you start to see some pinks coming into the sky in between the soft orange colors. Notice how beautiful the colors are and let them become softer and softer hues. Notice the sun is just about a half circle now. As the sun continues to set, you might start to see some soft purple colors in the sky. Again, imagine your body becoming more and more comfortable, letting any discomfort fade just as the colors in the sky are fading. As you continue to sit comfortably in your chair, Imagine the sky getting slightly darker. Notice more purple coming into the sky, perhaps some beautiful soft gray as the sun continues to set. Imagine your body continuing to be more relaxed and comfortable, just like the shades in the sky. You can invite your body and your mind to continue to feel comfortable and relaxed. Your mind can continue to lessen any discomfort which your body no longer needs to feel, continuing to let any discomfort fade just as the colors in the sunset have faded. Now imagine getting up from your chair. To bring this exercise to a close, I'll count down from 10 to 0, and when I reach 0, you can slowly open your eyes. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, continuing to feel comfortable and relaxed. 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Slowly open your eyes and take a deep breath in and out. Gently wiggle your fingers and toes and become readjusted to the room. And I invite you to put any comments in the chat room if you enjoyed it, if it was difficult for you, and just a caveat that imagery is a skill that is practiced. It's not easy right away, but if you take the time to practice it several days a week, it will become easier for you, and it can help bring down rumination, worry, and stress level. It relaxes the mind and the body. So thank you for participating if you did. Okay, Jim, do you want to, should we take some questions?
First, Melanie, I want to thank you so much for giving of your time and expertise to kick off our Facebook Lives chats. We're going to do this more, and for our audience, our community members, let us know what you want to hear, and we'll recruit the best. And I think Melanie was just a great kickoff. A couple questions real early in our talk was, would you ever share the name of the physician you saw in New York City?
I would. He has moved on, I believe, but I will see if I can find him. I see a physician right now in Long Island, but I will share my Long Island physician and the city one I used to, if I can find him. For sure.
And the other thing, just for people that were asking about PTs and where to find a good one, we have a state-by-state referral list, and we're really looking for physicians who are graded motor imaging and mirror box therapy, because that's the least invasive and it really can make a difference if it's in one limb. The other thing, Melanie, is that would you take telemedicine referrals? Would you?
Yes, I do telemedicine. Even when the quarantine's over, I'm going to continue to do telemedicine. I've been doing it a lot more since COVID, but I will happily do telemedicine. I unfortunately do not take insurance, but if your insurance company provides out-of-network benefits, we can work with that. But yes, I would be happy to take referrals.
Okay, that's great. And then is there an app for the guided imaging?
That I'm not sure of, but if you look on YouTube, there's so many guided imagery videos that you can access on there. And if you're having trouble locating any, I can certainly send you some.
Okay, that's great. So you were getting a couple questions about ketamine. Your opinion?
So I think ketamine is very powerful. So I'm not a medical doctor, but in my opinion, ketamine should be used if the other medications have not been successful, because it is so powerful. That said, I have heard testimonies that it is effective not for everybody, because everybody's body is different, but it can be effective for pain management, and it actually is a good antidepressant. That said, I do remember somebody sent in an email question, why don't doctors prescribe it for everybody? There can be some major side effects from ketamine. There can be hallucinations. They're similar to psychosis, major headaches, and things like that. So I think doctors are sometimes hesitant to use it because of the serious side effects. There can be memory loss. So I think a lot of doctors tend to use it as a last resort, but there are, I think, before you get to a ketamine infusion or something like that, there are some ways to use it in smaller doses, like lozenges and things like that. So I would, if you're having trouble finding effective treatments, and you've tried PT, you've tried medications, you've tried maybe spinal injections, and you're not having relief, I would ask your doctor about it.
Right. And for a lot of people, it's also the cost. Not a lot of doctors charging whatever the market will bear. And that's sad. And there's also other NMDA antagonists that people could try too. How about some more questions? Let's see. The other thing, how about low-dose naltrexone? Have you, any of your physicians mentioned that to you?
This I don't have enough knowledge about to answer this question. I don't know much about low-dose naltrexone. I'm sorry, no.
Okay, it's something that we funded a study at Stanford, and because there were some great case studies in it, and so now we're doing a clinical study. But It's something that's inexpensive and low side effect profile. It's not an overnight sensation, so you really have to try it. But there's generally no risk. Anything else?
I do see that there's a question about essential oils. Do you have any thoughts on essential oils?
Well, they're very relaxing. I don't know if they're good for chronic pain, but actually they might be. You know, my mother-in-law is actually very big into holistic medicine. Lavender is very soothing and relaxing. I don't know. I think if you have very low amount of pain, then the essential oils might be effective. A high amount of pain, probably not. I think they're a good adjunct to some of the relaxation strategies, so they might be good for relaxation. I'm not so sure about the pain.
Yeah. Alexis, any other questions you think we should ask that you saw with the scroll?
I did see a couple that I'll just throw out there and see if we can discuss them. But, you know, what do you think, or what do you do when you have dual illnesses? So a lot of CRPS warriors have, you know, another condition. You know, what are your thoughts about, you know, maybe treating one and treating the other at the same? Like, how does that work when you have multiple conditions at the same time?
We're talking about medical conditions?
Yeah, comorbidities. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it depends on the illness. And, you know, this is true in the mental health field as well. Whichever is interfering with your life the most, that's the one you go for. So if the CRPS is interfering with your life the most, then you treat that. Let's say you have CRPS and fibromyalgia. Probably the CRPS is affecting you more than the fibromyalgia. So I would target that first. But in both cases, I would think you'd have to find a doctor who's knowledgeable, extremely knowledgeable in both. So I think that the take home point of my presentation is you need to find a great medical professional who's extremely knowledgeable in CRPS. It's easier to find medical professionals who are more knowledgeable in your other disorders, but you really need to find a doctor, a pain management doctor or a neurologist who knows what they're doing with the CRPS. And then that person will probably also know about your dual diagnosis.
Melanie, someone asked if you're still doing physical therapy now.
I only do it if I have a flare. Mm-hmm. What I do is I go for walks every day when it's not raining. So I consider that my physical therapy because, like we talked about before, that weight bearing is so important to rewire the circuitry. So that's my physical therapy, is that weight bearing. But the intensive physical therapy that I was doing at the beginning, I don't do that every day. I was doing that for probably about 4 years. And then once I got better and didn't really need it as much, I didn't do it consistently. But if I have a flare, then I go back to it. Great
One
question.
thing we didn't talk about was biofeedback. Do you think that would be helpful for people with CRPS?
Yes, I actually did biofeedback many years ago. I did suffer from a little bit of anxiety, and I went to a psychologist who helped me with biofeedback. Some members of my family have done it. I think it's a very useful tool. It's not useful for everybody, just like everything else we've spoken about, but I think it can be very helpful to help your mood. It can help with stress. It can help with anxiety. So it's just another tool for the toolbox, and I think it can be very helpful.
Yeah. Dr. Chopra always talks about adding 10% and another 10%, another 10%, and eventually it really improves your quality of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did see a question from Nurse Beth who just asked do you do therapy for just CRPS patients, or do you do therapy for caregivers as well?
That's a great question. I would do both. I think that's really important. Because I know with any illness, the caregiver is going through the stress and the trauma along with them, and they have different symptoms. when anybody's going through any kind of chronic illness, the patient's going through the physical and the emotional, but the caregiver is also suffering. So absolutely, I would see the caregiver as well. Thank you.
And there's also someone asked about caregiver groups. Some of the support groups online and also face-to-face are for both. And there's also on Facebook, there's a great caregivers group. If people would email me, I could send them that list. And I just want to give you my email, and always open to try to help. It's info@rsds.org.
We have a question from Karen who asks, what do you do when you have feelings kind of like, why me? Like, why am I the person who has CRPS, or my child or my spouse? Like, how do you deal with that?
Oh yeah, and I had that, so I get it. I definitely had that at the beginning. So first, I think it's important to tell yourself that it's 100% normal to have that thought. But after you have that thought, to move on from it and say, it's not helping me. You know, one of the greatest challenges to an unhelpful thought is to say to myself, or to say to yourself, how is this thought helping me? Is it getting me anywhere? Is having this thought helping me get to where I need to be, or is it hurting me and is it holding me back? So having this thought, why is this happening to me? What did I do? You know, is that thought helping me get to my goal? Is it helping me to get better, or is it hurting me? And this thought's actually hurting me because it's not going to help me progress in my treatment. It's not going to help me get to feeling better. It's hurting me. So my old mentor used to say, do, don't stew. So in having that thought of, you know, why is this happening to me? I'm stewing. So do something productive instead. So go be productive instead of stewing in that rumination. So, you know, be forgiving of yourself, you know, and say, it's okay that I had that thought, but now let me move on from it.
And sometimes it takes time. A lot of times people have to grieve their losses.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's where the acceptance is, the grieving and the acceptance, and then moving on from that.
Alexis, say anything else?
I just see Nurse Beth saying, do you have to grieve loss of who you were in order to finally accept who you are now?
Well, that's what Jim was saying, right? But I don't know if you have to totally grieve the loss, because there's a chance you might get yourself back, you know? So, you know, still maintaining that hope, you know, that was actually, I didn't click on that last slide I had, I don't think. Maintain hope. You know, like I said earlier in my presentation, I used to be a dancer. I can't fully dance to where I was, but I can dance a little bit. You know, so I grieve for the loss of, you know, my 100% self, but I'm a little bit to where I was. Now I know that's not the case for everybody, but yeah, so of course you have to grieve for the loss, but then also two things can be true at the same time. So you can grieve that, but also maintain hope that you will gain some of that back, and look forward to where you're going to be and think about your new self.
Mm-hmm. Melanie, someone just asked about a family member that her husband will not go into therapy. Any ideas on how to motivate that?
Oh, this is always the challenge, not just in CRPS, but in multiple areas of life. Obviously, you can't force them. People have to come to it at their own time. I find that books sometimes help, you know, sort of like leave that book out, you know. This is
it's a tough question.
It really is a tough question. You can like just leave little seedlings around, you know, just not forcing them, because anytime you try to force somebody to do something, they're gonna retreat, you know, and get defensive about it. So, you know, maybe just asking questions, you know, why are you reluctant to do it? Talking about the benefits of doing it, and then just leaving it there, leaving it for them to ponder. Because anytime you really try to force an idea down someone's throat, they're gonna not really want to do it, and they're going to become stubborn about it. So just plant the seed and see if it grows.
Alexis, when we leave Facebook Live, will the comments still be with our presentation?
The comments will still be with the presentation.
Okay, because what I've really seen, it's really neat, is some individuals are just getting together right then, and that's
I'm loving seeing this. There's so many people who I see are connecting. This is awesome.
Yeah, they're talking about getting together on Zoom.
Right.
That's wonderful. So, go ahead.
I just saw a question that popped up from Mark, and he's asking if there is any recent progress in research, or there's any new research on CRPS that maybe we could share, any new news.
I wish I could be more positive. There's been a couple clinical trials that have failed. And when I talk to my scientific researchers about why that might have happened, it is more and more we're seeing that CRPS is a heterogeneous disease. And what's happened in the clinical trials is they've allowed everyone in, with few exclusions. And that has failed. And also, when I've talked to them, that the dosage, especially with the noradrenaline, might have been too low to really help. That might have really caused that trial to fail. I have been in contact with, since the rare disease designation, there's been a couple promising enters into the system. There's a small clinical trial in the UK for a new compound. And that if it's successful in the UK, they're going to come to America. So, and that has it actually has, attacks the same receptor as ketamine, but much less side effects. So there's a lot of hope there. I think that what bothers me is that I've worked for 2 decades for this organization. And it's so sad that often people come to me 5 years in. So I think that if we could more and more create awareness, especially among physicians and nurses, and we get that first, this might be something that you might want to check out and get them into therapy sooner, because Melanie, you had that experience of just going, and then not having an answer, and finally having an answer. And thank God we were able to achieve remission. Okay. Well, Melanie, I want to thank you so much. It's been great to have you here. And Alexis, I'm glad that our community sees you. You're wonderful. And thank you all for attending. And this will be up, and we'll get the slides to you. And wishing you all Godspeed. Take care.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm going to do a quick outro really quickly, but thank you everyone for joining. So if you joined late, or if you know someone who could not make it, the full recording of this session will live in the live tab on our Facebook page. If you cannot find it, you have any questions, of course, send us a message. We will also send out Melanie's presentation for you to view. So please be sure you are subscribed to the RSDSA newsletter. I will make sure that link is also included. It's in the chat, but you may have gone missing a little bit, but I will make sure that is posted on Facebook. And a couple more reminders, if you're interested in writing for the RSDSA blog, we're always looking for new warriors to tell their stories. We post a new blog every Wednesday. So if you're interested in telling your story, send us a message. If you need help finding a support group or a physician, send us a message. And we also have connections to a support group in the UK. So if you are outside the US, we can definitely try to help you find others who have CRPS outside of the US. But I guess you can see, if you have any questions, send us a message. You can email Jim at info@rsds.org. We're here for you. Thank you for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks again, Alexis, Melanie.
Thank you.